9:16. Welcome back to the morning show with Jeff and Will here on AM 1700 WRCR Haverstraw and WRCR.com. We welcome in at this time the editor of the Rockland County Business Journal. You can find that at rcbizjournal.com, Tina Traster. Good morning, Tina. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, I think that I, like many Americans, probably tossed and turned last night. I think it could be a dark day that's going to get darker. If you have a pension, if you have retirement funds, if you have, if you're in the stock market, if you're wondering about, we are potentially at the cusp. Maybe we are already in a crisis. Certainly, I know that the markets are not Main Street, and I'm sure that I didn't hear Ken's broadcast this morning, but I'm sure he was talking about this. We're in a very, very frightening and uncertain moment. A lot of the big financial wizards, so to speak, the big voices, including Jamie Dimon from Chase, many, actually, I put something on Facebook about this. When we dealt with the stock crash in '87, it was the government bailing out banks, and when we dealt with the pandemic, it was the government that was protecting us. And this is something that's been this tariff war, this extreme tariff war, is something that's actually been manufactured by the government. So I think we're in an unknown place. I want to say that on Saturday, there were widespread protests that were organized by groups like Hands Off and Indivisible and others. And we did cover in a pictorial format we attended both the Nanuet, not attended, but covered the Nanuet protest that was on the Four Corners, as well, Middletown Road and 59, as well as Stony Point. I can tell you that in Nanuet, I have never, ever seen anything like that in terms of people coming out to protest. I eyeballed the crowd. I would estimate that there were about 1,000 people when you counted all four corners and the way it spilled in every direction. And, I want to note that as far as I know, I believe we were the only media outlet, I think we were the only media outlet that was specifically on the ground in Nanuet, because I know that other outlets here did not come out to that particular site. But we were there, and we captured it, and we captured it in photos, and we put it on as we always do on social media, and the reflection of the reaction to that protest certainly shows how incredibly divided we are as a nation. And how we're basically in a civil war. And I know I'm using these big terms and they sound dramatic, but I think that they understate the moment that we're in. I wanted to talk about a story that we wrote just last week, we published just last week, but how even this story kind of points to the potential for weakness and disruption. We wrote a story about Seth Marks, who was the first one to bring legal cannabis for recreational use to the county with his Treehouse Cannabis at 28 Route 59 in Nyack. And he was basically celebrating a year since he started delivery service, and he's been open with his shop for since last August. And we visited, with him in the story to ask him how Rockland's first licensed and legal cannabis dispensary is going. And apparently it's going very, very well. And, Joe Ram, the mayor of Nyack, only had wonderful quote about him. The interesting thing, though, if we look at numbers, because numbers, as I always like to say, do tell the story, is that the village netted almost $140,000 in tax revenue from the cannabis dispensary, and if sales maintain their pace, say over the next let's say over the next year, at the same rate, NIAC would be positioned to take in $400,000 in annual tax revenue. That's not something to sneeze at. That's a lot of dosh. That's a lot of cash. So the cannabis business, I'll remind everybody, was something that a couple of years ago towns and villages had the option to opt out of, and many did. I think most did, with the exception of Piermont, Hilburn, and a few the village of Haverstraw and a few Ramapo villages. They all embraced dispensaries. Now, whereas the rest of Rockland decided to, leave that opportunity on the table, and that's the way it still is right now. The other thing that is that's notable about what's going on, funny enough, in NIAC is, so there's a lot of buzz and a lot of talk about a medical dispensary coming to take over the Starbucks site that's right near the corner of Broadway and Main. And there's a lot of dissension about it, although that dispensary right now would just be a medical dispensary, just like the one on Route 304 in Broadville. But there's some controversy over that, and the village is having to, I guess, just make sure that its laws make sense, and in terms of what the distance is that one dispensary can be from another. So NIAC is on it, and they're reaping the benefit of it, and they are trying to figure out whether or not how much more of it does the village can support. In the meantime, however, the cannabis industry is young, and it's vulnerable because it's young and it's got a lot of bugs that it's still trying to work out. But what we have learned is that the President Trump's administration, his on again, off again tariffs, are also reaching into this nascent industry, and they will stretch into every single aspect of our lives as consumers. So, for example, tariffs are likely to affect cannabis growers and processors, adding to costs of fertilizers, hoop houses, vaping equipment, packaging, and other components of both the cultivating and processing at a time when, prices are generally falling and squeezing the profit margins on this already, fragile cannabis economy. Not to mention all the people who are selling cannabis illegally, which is actually right here in Rockland in plain sight. That's another story for another day. So if the tariffs are going to be driven up, I don't know what it does to the momentum, of this growing industry. But it's an interesting way to think about when, it's hard to get one's head around this topic. I mean, it's so huge, and I know that consumers woke up yesterday thinking, well, should I go and stockpile? What can I go and get off the shelves right now, so that it might, hedge the blunt the blow of what are going to be rising prices. But this is going to be, such an across the board situation. So, for example, there's a lot of obviously conversation about cars, and we a little bit later today we're putting out a piece about, as you know, there's a Jaguar Land Rover dealership that is being constructed also on Route 59,
right by Palisade Center, yeah.
Yeah, right by the Palisade Center. And what we're reporting, and again, stay tuned, this will be out in a couple of hours. But what we're essentially reporting is that, so Jaguar has suspended all of its car shipments to the U.S. for the month of April over these sweeping tariffs. Now, here you have this fairly massive showroom, dealership, okay, that's being built on Route 59 with the presumption, certainly when that was planned, and even now, because you've seen that they're in mid-construction right now.
Yep.
I mean, right, so they're going to have to move ahead, and they're going to continue to build their 31,300 square foot building, which is going to include 16,000 square feet of showroom area, and a service department and all sorts of things. But if so this is where it boils down to each and every one of us. So if they don't succeed, if they end up having, a showroom that has no cars in it, or, the demand just, goes off the cliff, well, that's lost revenue. I mean, I don't know what happens. What happens? Is it lost revenue to the town, to the county? Does the building just stay empty? Everything is. If you have your antenna up and you take a walk or take a drive, you can look at anything, and you can say, well, what does this mean? What are the implications here? I mean, we saw that in real time when we all lived through the pandemic. And we all lived through the pandemic, but we did so with a lot of aid and a lot of bolstering and a lot of financial support to get us through. Industries like the restaurant industry, took tables outside and figured out delivery. I mean, there was definitely a resourceful response to an unprecedented disaster. But to have tariffs like this, the last time in history, there's two times in history, and the fallout in both cases was a depression. So I don't know. I didn't hear Ken's segment today, but I don't imagine that he can. I wonder if he carved out anything rosy out of this. I don't think so. I know that even just a smattering. I saw that Ted Cruz from Texas talked about how suicidal this is. So I don't know if this solid block of support for whatever Trump wants will hold here. But I mean, this is impacting the entire world. And one last thing I will say is, because I see my time running down, but one last thing I will say is that we will add to Rockland County Business Journal a ticker tape to monitor the stock market, just in case that's useful to anybody, because it's going to be something, and people are going to have to make decisions. A lot of people have other people manage their money for them, but it's also going to be pocketbook issues. How do we spend? What do we do? Do we freeze or do we treat life as usual? So anyway,
no doubt that'll be helpful to people. Also, I did. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. I did want to talk to you about your Faith-Based Affordable Housing Act article that you have there from David Carlucci. That would be great. Thank you very much, Tina, for joining us as always. Check out rcbizjournal.com. We'll talk to you again next Monday.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.